Morning, everyone. Can everyone hear? Yeah, I'll take some questions while Willie's getting set up. I suppose there has been some questions. Is a derogation farmer eligible? Yes, they are. I mean, that's there's no restrictions on livestock. As I say, we've set up 2 groups, basically to ensure that we have a good number of farmers so that we can test both scorecard types, which Tara has outlined. It will be possible for a farmer to switch agents, post-application stage, as long as they're approved, and do the training later in June, as Tara referred to. There will be equal marks for each of the categories shown on the selection criteria, so the same marks for high or low status. And there's questions related to the proportion of ANC or Natura, and the marks will vary depending on what proportion of the farmer has ANC or Natura, so that will be a variable mark for those 2 score points. Another question came up there on the list of indicator species. Yes, Tara referred to the scorecards and the tip sheets. The list of indicator species will be on that. There'll be no max limit per advisor in terms of applications. As Stephen pointed out in the presentation, we will be looking to have a geographical spread. That will be a critical component of the selection, as well as using selection criteria. A couple of questions, Tara, maybe I might ask you to address maybe on the league. You partially touched on them already. It's to do with the amount of nitrogen on a low input grassland and the assessment process. Will there be a quadrant, that type of thing?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Address those. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but there's no prescription on the amount of fertilizer that is allowed. But it's like if it was 40 kilos per hectare of chemical was allowed in glass for the lip action. So I would say that the recommendation is probably 40 combined. And I mean, if you have lower than that, I mean, really for floristic diversity, it's anything that's significantly more than 25 is going to reduce in results in reduced species diversity. And there's no quadrats, no. We'll teach you this we'll go through it in detail, and you'll see in the scorecard in the video that we'll make for you as well. We'll give you an example of how we do a field, but it's a W-shaped walk through a field, to take 10 minutes. There's no having to be looking in detail at quadrants on the ground. It's a W-shaped walk, and you mark what you see as you walk through.
Yeah, thanks, Tara. There's a few questions, I suppose, in the area of field margin management and hedgerow management as well over the project period, whether they can be grazed or not, and the fact that we're starting late with the program in year 1, we've kind of ruled out the grazing option year 1 because margins will be closed quite late. So we don't think it's appropriate to graze these margins in year 1, but it's something we can maybe look at as we go to the pilot. But the ideal scenario, I suppose, as it were, is to leave these margins in place as long as possible so that they have an overwintering value in year 1. And it will be possible to manage the hedgerows, etc. In the field margin, as well as managing the hedgerow. That will be a key component, obviously. There's another question on whether tillage farmers are eligible. They are, in the sense that if they have a mixed farm or if they want to put down multi-species lay, they're eligible. But tillage parcels or arable parcels themselves are not eligible for REAP. There's a further question related to the density of boundary features in REAP fields, or is it a whole farm? Well, we're just applying that density figure to the REAP fields themselves. This isn't a whole farm project, so it's very confined and focused from that perspective. Similarly, there was some questions, I suppose, around the management, I suppose, on the cultivation side, concerns about weeds maybe, but we are talking about managed margins, so we want them to be flailed and topped to control any species in the margins. But the basic concept, I suppose, behind trying to have fence margins is to create these wildlife corridors, particularly in the context of the multi-species. We actually want to get some flowering species as well behind that fence line, but as I say, we will control them later on in the season or in the early spring. Another question on the app, is there a scoring app? Not in year one, so we will have the scoring tip sheets, as Tara mentioned. We're hoping to have an app developed for scoring in year two. But as Tara said, we will have a geotagged photo app for taking pictures related to the project in year one, so that's under development. I know a number of advisors are already involved in the testing of that, the different phases of that app development. So I think that's basically it. I'll hand back to Willie.
Can I be heard now, Jerome?
Yeah, I can hear you now, Willie.
Right. Sorry, folks, must be some sort of a problem. Just to say, as I said previously, the PowerPoint presentations will be made available to people, and we'll put them up on the website later on. And the terms and conditions, the information booklet, and the specification will also be sent out to the advisors later on today at some stage. We'll send those out on an email. The system is actually open this afternoon for applications. At the moment, the closing date as it stands for applications is the closing date at the moment is Monday, the 10th of April. One of the questions coming in, there's a number of questions coming in about that closing date in particular, that advisors obviously are under pressure with BPS applications, and we've been speaking on that, and we obviously appreciate that, and it's something that we'll have a look at, something we'll take under advisement. Some of the other questions, just quickly from the administration side, there's questions coming in about GLAS and whether whoever applied for GLAS but never got payment. In relation to GLAS, if anyone was ever approved into the GLAS scheme, they won't be allowed. If they ever received an approval letter, well, then they won't be allowed into REAP. If they were ever in GLAS, or they were thrown out of it, or they left of their own accord, they won't be allowed into REAP. It's just specifically, if you received an approval letter, you won't get in. The same with the organic farming scheme. If you were in, or currently in organics, or in any of the EAPs, you won't be allowed to join REAP either. Couple of questions coming up on the BPS applications. Can new farmers come in this year, or can people rent new land in 2021? The simple answer to that is no, that it's a prerequisite of the pilot that there has to have been a BPS application for 2020. So that's some of the questions. We've gone the hour and 10 minutes. Jerome, is there any other questions you see that you want to answer there before we finish up?
Late ones, I suppose, coming in, Willie. I might just address a few of them. It relates, I suppose, nutrient management, and as we're in GLAS, I mean, as Tara said already, I mean, it's not a prescription-based project. It's very much, everything is depending on the scorecards themselves. So while we be issuing guidance, we won't be getting into nutrient management or detailed prescriptions on that side of things. And someone was just asking for confirmation there as well about the limit on advisor or not. But basically at application stage, yes, there won't be a limit on how many applicants an advisor can enter into the scheme or into the project. So I think that's basically it. There's another question there, I suppose, around the planning, and I suppose it was covered already, but I mean, just to reiterate that we're not asking for any commitments at the application stage. So we've set up these two groups from the selection perspective, but a farmer can select either scorecard from either group at a later stage after the training session. So there's no initial commitment to either scorecard type, or there's no need to go into that detailed planning. So we're really talking about an expression of interest from the farmer's perspective for that initial application stage. So as Willie said, we'll cover some of the other questions at a later stage.
Just to finish out, folks, as Jerome had said, there obviously are a lot of questions, so we will do up a frequently answered asked questions document, and we will publish that as soon as possible over the next few days. And just to remind people as well, then the email address, if anyone has any individual email queries, it's RBP, as in results-based project, rbp@agriculture.gov.ie, if anyone wants to send in any questions. So we'll get to questions as quickly as we can. We'll try and get as many answers out as we can as soon as possible. So I think that's it, folks. We'll leave it at that, and best of luck with it.